So today we're beginning our first session on Bhagavad Gita. I think it's going to run around 40 sessions. And so because of that, there's 700 verses in the Gita, as opposed to, we had 18 and 11 in the first two works we did. So we're going to be covering much, much larger swaths of the work than we did. We won't be going so much verse by verse, but by section, we'll look at some of the verses. And we'll try to, we're going to have to cover a lot of ground, but by virtue of that, we're going to have to leave a lot on the table. The Bhagavad Gita is something you can study again and again and again, and find so many meanings within each and individual verse when you look at the various commentaries. So we're going to try to get a good understanding of the continuity of it, of the basic concepts. We're going to try to especially see how it integrates into our devotional lives. And but we will be covering a lot of ground quickly. So and be warned that there will be a lot left on the table in this. There'll be much more you can learn afterwards. Okay, so here this is our first Bhagavad Gita. We're starting with chapter 1. We'll cover chapter 1 today, and so here we go. And the first slide here is the setting. The Bhagavad Gita is spoken on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Actually, the picture we have here is a little bit further in. During the middle of chapter 1, we'll see where where Arjuna requests Krishna to please drive him out into the middle of the two armies. Here we see the two armies lined up across from each other, and we see the chariot with Krishna and Arjuna here going out into the middle. The Battle of Kurukshetra was a fratricidal war of succession. Succession means, to the throne. Who succeeds to the throne? And a fratricidal war means between members of the same family. And so there's so much detail in how that all came about. I have a quick genealogy that I grabbed online that shows a little bit the relationships between the participants. And there's a whole section of the Mahabharata that describes in detail. Nothing happened in a straightforward way in this situation. We don't have time to cover all of that sort of thing, but we see that because many times we see that they're referred to as the Kurus. We'll see when Krishna takes Arjuna out into the middle of the armies, Krishna says, "Behold all the Kurus." So that their ancestor was Kuru. And it says here, after 6 generations, there was Maharaj Shantanu, who had 2 wives. First, it was Mother Ganga, and then later on, after she left, there was Satyavati. And so the son of Ganga and Maharaj Shantanu, there's all kind of details here too, was Bhishma, the one who took the terrible vow of perpetual celibacy. And then Shantanu and Satyavati had Vichitravirya, and the other son's not mentioned here in this thing because he didn't have any children. I think it was Chitrangada or what was his name? He was killed by a Gandharva who had the same name. What was his name? It wasn't. I had the wrong name. But anyway, and so Vichitravirya died young, without children. And so his 2 wives, Ambika and Ambalika, had children by Vyasadeva. His mother Satyavati approached Bhishma and said, "Now you have to break your vow of celibacy, and you have to have children so that the dynasty can continue." And he said that he would never break his vow, but that in the past, when Parashuram had killed all of the Kshatriyas, the widows of the Kshatriyas had children by qualified Brahmins. And so she happened to be also the mother of Vyasadeva, and so she called Vyasadeva. And so from the 2 wives came Dhritarashtra and Pandu. Dhritarashtra was the oldest and Pandu the younger. And then by a maidservant there was also Vidura. So Dhritarashtra was the eldest. And so the usual right, he would be king. He would be the emperor. The eldest son is always the emperor. However, he was born blind. And so the kings in those days, they had to perform on the battlefield. They were warriors. And so the blindness was a disability that wouldn't allow that. And so it went to Pandu. And so then Dhritarashtra had 100 sons. And Pandu also, there was more complications, but he had sons not of his own, but through the agency of various devatas. Dharma was the father of Yudhisthira through Kunti, Vayu, Bhima, Indra, Arjuna, and the Ashwini Kumaras were Nakula and Sahadev. And so these were the two families. And so by right, we'll go into the next slide. So there's two members two branches of the same family: the sons of Dhritarashtra, the sons of Pandu, and their allies. That's what we have. So it's a fratricidal war, and then it's a war of succession. So Dhritarashtra was the elder brother of Pandu, and would have been the rightful heir to the throne, but was disqualified due to his blindness. So Pandu was the king, but he died young. And his children were too young to assume the throne. So because his children, of course, Yudhisthira was the eldest, he would naturally be the king, but he was too young to take over the rule. And so Dhritarashtra became the regent, as we usually call it here in the West, as someone who takes over on an interim basis until he gets old enough to rule. But that of course opened an interesting line of thought for Dhritarashtra and his ambitious son Duryodhana, because they very much wanted. He very much was unhappy that he couldn't be the king in the first place, and so his line of reasoning is that he's the elder brother to begin with. He ordinarily would have had the throne. He couldn't have it because of this, karmic thing, that he was blind, but now he's the king anyway, right? And he has able-bodied sons. So in his mind, why shouldn't his sons carry on the tradition? That's not the way it's supposed to be, though. The laws of succession are quite clear, that only a legitimate king and his legitimate heir would take over. So Yudhisthira had to be one. But he's thinking in terms of, his ambition clouds his thinking. So he's thinking, this is a really unique case. Right? The rules weren't set up for this kind of a case. That was just the normal way it goes. Why can't it go this way this time? And so they decided then that they wanted to take it by any means possible. Okay. And Prabhupada mentions in the purports here, this in the first chapter, text 23, he says, "It was an open secret that Duryodhana wanted to usurp the kingdom of the Pandavas by evil plans in collaboration with his father Dhritarashtra." And so after there's so much of the Mahabharata is about this story, and so, I'm just going to summarize it. After the failure of various intrigues and assassination attempts, and after rejecting all attempts at reaching a negotiated compromise, Dhritarashtra and Duryodhana resorted to force of arms to achieve their objective. They tried different ways to get rid of the Pandavas, to kill them, and the Pandavas they were willing to even negotiate. They made their last negotiation effort that they would accept 5 villages, because it's the dharma of the warriors that they have to rule something. And so for them not to have anything to rule at all would have been impossible for them dharmically. So they said, you give us 1 village each. Mm-hmm. But that's a very dicey thing for a usurper. If you are illegitimately taking the throne, you do not want to have the legitimate heirs alive and in the area in any way possible. That makes your position intrinsically insecure. And so so everything was. All attempts at making peace was done. We know in the background that Krishna wanted it to happen. There's an incident in the Bhagavatam where he hardens Duryodhana's heart, actually. But so it was on. So nothing to do but to fight over it then. And then it says, just as the battle is about to begin, something extraordinary happens, which precipitates Krishna speaking the wisdom of the Bhagavad Gita. So in the first chapter, we're there. Dhritarashtra is asking what's happened. He has his assistant Sanjay, who has mystical vision, who can envision the battlefield from afar. He's a disciple of Vyasadeva. And Dhritarashtra is asking what's happening. And so the armies have lined up, and Duryodhana travels around and tries to fire up his troops. He has the stronger force by far. He has Bhishma, the greatest warrior, and Drona, who was the teacher of all of the people on both sides, all the sons of Pandu and Dhritarashtra. And nobody could take him either. But they both were affectionate to the Pandavas. And so Duryodhana, in the early parts of the chapter, tries to make sure that both Bhishma and Drona will fight to their full capacity and not just to do a half-hearted effort because they secretly are admirers of the Pandavas. And so then there's preliminaries. So there's a blowing of conch shells and drums and things like in more recent times, like in Scotland, like the British Army would have bagpipers and drummers and stuff. There used to be always military bands. That used to be a part of warfare, and so it fires your guys up and it frightens the other side. And so there's the blowing of conch shells and the beating of drums and bugles and stuff on both sides. They both kind of posture a little bit first, and it's just about the moment. Arjuna is. We're gonna read through a few of the verses here. Starts at 120. He's just about everything's just about to happen here. So it's 120. Ata vivastitan drishtva dartarastran kapidvajaha pravrite shastra sampate dhanarudyam yapandavaha rishikesham tadavakyam idamaha mahipate. At that time, Arjuna, the son of Pandu, seated in the chariot bearing the flag marked with Hanuman, took up his bow and prepared to shoot his arrows. O king, after looking at the sons of Dhritarashtra drawn in military array, Arjuna then spoke to Lord Krishna these words. So this is when the unusual occurrence is beginning here. And he pauses. He's ready to start, and he makes this little pause. And he says in the next verse, Arjuna uvacha senayorubayoru madhye ratam stapaya mechuta yavadetan niriksheham yodukam anavastitan karmaya saha yodavyam asmin rana samudhyame. Arjuna said, O infallible one, talking to Krishna, please draw my chariot between the two armies, so that I may see those present here who desire to fight and with whom I must contend in this great trial of arms. And then Yotsyaman anaviksheham ya ete trasamagataha dartarastrasya durbudhe ryude priya chikirshavaha. Let me see those who have come here to fight, wishing to please the evil-minded son of Dhritarashtra. Sanjaya uvacha, this is 24, evamukto rishi kesho gudakeshana bharata senayorabayor madhye stapayatva ratotamam. Sanjaya said, O descendant of Bharat, having thus been addressed by Arjuna, Lord Krishna drew up the fine chariot in the midst of the armies, of both parties. And we go back to our original photograph here, where they're coming. Krishna is driving out into the middle of the two armies. And it says, Bhishma Drona Prumukataha Sarvesham Chamahishatam Uvacha Partha Paschaitan Samvetan Kuru Niti. In the presence of Bhishma, Drona, and all the other chieftains of the world, the Lord said, just behold, Partha, all the Kurus assembled here. So we saw in the beginning, they're all the members of the Kuru family. So that means on both sides. And here particularly it says that he's Bhishma Drona Pramukataha, in the front of the face. And so those are the two people that Arjuna respects and cares for the most. When Arjuna and his brothers, they were born in the wilderness, actually, because Pandu was doing austerities at the last part of his life. Then when they came back to the capital, they were there with their mother. They were without their father, without that kind of protection. They were just with their mother, and it soon became a hostile environment for them. But they had great affection from Bhishma, and Drona was their teacher. So these were two people most dear to Arjuna, and it was most disturbing for him to be facing them in battle. The people that mattered most to him. He later calls them his gurus, like that, and so he should be worshiping them. So Krishna, manages to to pull him right out into the front of the people that he cares about most, because he knows what's working inside of Arjuna's mind. And then Tatra pashat stitan parta pitrinata pitamahan acharyan matulan bratrin putran pautran sakings tata shwasuran suridaschaiva senayorubayorapi. There Arjuna could see, within the midst of the armies of both parties, his fathers, grandfathers, teachers, maternal uncles, brothers, sons, grandsons, friends, and also his fathers-in-law and well-wishers. Now, generally, when you're on a battle, there's the enemy, right? And even in modern times, we always try to dehumanize the enemy. We give them some kind of a bad name or something like that, And because even people that go through warfare, and see a lot of combat, they're even traumatized sometimes by the death of the enemies. Because it's so horrendous. But so usually people try to to somehow dehumanize or demonize the enemy, and it makes it more palatable. So you imagine in a situation like this, where it's all your relatives, And the Sanskrit word, for relative and friend are the same thing, That's who you are. They're your people. So you're surrounded by all your people, And so he sees that. Tan simiksha kaunteya sarvan bandhu navastitan kripaya paraya vishto vishidam idamabravit. This is text 127. When the son of Kunti, Arjuna, saw all these different grades of friends and relatives, he became overwhelmed with compassion. Kripaya paraya avishta. Kripaya is compassion. Paraya is of a high grade, Prabhupada says, a very extreme, and he's overwhelmed by that. So he starts to freak out when he contemplates what's about to happen. He's a warrior, so he's used to warfare, and so up until that point, he seemed like he was okay. And now he's contemplating something he never expected to have to see or do. And then he says, Arjuna uvacha, this is text 28, Drishtve mam svajanam Krishna yuyutsam samupastitam sidanti mama gatrani mukam cha parishushati. Arjuna said, my dear Krishna, seeing my friends and relatives present before me in such a fighting spirit, I feel the limbs of my body quivering and my mouth drying up. So he's entering into this is not just a kind of a mild aversion. Right? He's having a full scale. When you have strong emotions, they have a physical manifestation. If you're really angry, you'll clench your fist. Or when you're happy, you smile and laugh and things. And so if it's a lower grade emotion, it might not be so apparent. But here, and the Kshatriyas are tough people. If you see how they fight, most of the time they don't even really start to get into the battle until they're wounded a couple of times. They get shot by a couple of arrows. A normal human these days, that's enough to put you into the hospital. They get shot with a couple of arrows, sometimes 2 or 3, and then it wakes them up and they start to really fight. So they're not, and just the sight of battle also is not that that frightening to them. Like you said, we have people that go to battle these days and they're traumatized by what they see. They come back with post-traumatic stress syndrome and stuff. But the Kshatriyas, there's that example in the Bhagavatam when Krishna is fighting Jarasandha, where they give these poetic descriptions, like the blood was flowing like rivers, and the limbs of their bodies that had been severed were like the snakes flowing in the rivers, and the heads were like turtles. Just a horrific, kind of description. But the Kshatriyas, to them, that's great. That's a real battle. That's beautiful to them. That's beautiful poetry to the Kshatriyas. To us, it's like, wow. Why do you write poetry about something so horrific? But to them, the battlefield environment is natural. That's their nature. But here his limbs of the body, he's getting weak, he's shaking, his mouth is getting dry, and then he goes on, Vepatuscha sharira me romaharshascha jayate gandivam shangsate hastat tokchaiva paridayate. My whole body is trembling, my hair is standing on end, my bow gandiva is slipping from my hand, and my skin is burning. Srila Baladev Vijayabhushan says that his heart is on fire. That's why he feels like his skin is burning. As the heart's really beating really fast, and you get flushed, on the skin. So it's like that. It's coming even from the heart. He says his heart is burning, and he's dropping his bow. He's completely incapacitated. His hair is standing on end. He's got the horripilation. And then in 30 he says, Nacha shaknom yavastatum brahmativa chime manaha nimitani cha pashyami viparitani keshava. I am now unable to stand here any longer. He wants to get out. He wants to flee or ready to collapse. I'm forgetting myself and my mind is reeling. Like almost ready to faint, I see only causes of misfortune, O Krishna, killer of the Keshi demon. Okay, so this is the event that precipitates the speaking of the Bhagavad Gita, and the reason I'm focusing on this is that the Bhagavad Gita it presents universal principles which are applicable to everyone in any time. But it also it's a specific response to Arjuna's situation. And so if we want to understand Bhagavad Gita, what help that we can have is to understand Arjuna and his situation and see how the Bhagavad Gita alleviates and solves his problem. So there's an actual concrete solution, application of the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita there in Arjuna. So sometimes in mathematics you learn principles and then you have to solve problems. So here a specific problem is solved. And so if we can get into Arjuna, kind of stand in his shoes and experience the Bhagavad Gita through that perspective, we will get a greater insight into how the Bhagavad Gita flows, exactly how it's working. So it's not, this is not just an excuse for Krishna to speak the Gita, but it also is a help for us if we can understand Arjuna's mind and heart and how then he responds to the teachings. It will help us to comprehend the teachings better. That's one of the things we want to do is we're going to stand a little bit in Arjuna's shoes if we can, and try to understand where he's coming from. Then especially in the second chapter, when Krishna starts to explain the philosophy, we can refer back to that. See, how is Arjuna in the situation he's in? How does this affect him? How does this change his perspective? How does this help him to move forward? Because in one sense, we're going to talk about that at the end. We're having two big principles that come throughout Bhagavad Gita: attachment and aversion, and we're seeing those two things happen here in this one in the first chapter. Attachment on the view of on the part of the Dhritarashtra and Duryodhana and company, and aversion on the part of Arjuna. And acting in a coherent way requires the ability to control both attachment and aversion. And we'll see this theme coming through Bhagavad Gita. How actually Krishna says that all living beings are born under this attachment and aversion, raga dvesha. So we'll see a little foreshadowing of that here in this first chapter. Okay? So I think if we get into crawl underneath Arjuna's skin a little bit, stand in his shoes, try to see what he's experiencing, it will help us later on when we encounter the actual philosophy. Because we tend to, and because Arjuna's he's going to go along and he's going to give various arguments. And here Prabhupada expands on it a little bit here in his purport. And this is 128 in his purport. He says, although it is not mentioned here, still one can easily imagine that not only were Arjuna's bodily limbs quivering and his mouth drying up, but he was also crying out of compassion. Such symptoms in Arjuna were not due to weakness, but due to his soft-heartedness, a characteristic of a pure devotee of the Lord. So it's even, so he's feeling all these symptoms. He's even crying. Prabhupada says he's really incapacitated by the whole thing. It's incredibly horrible to him to contemplate this. And Prabhupada says it's a question of his soft-heartedness. That he, because what happens, and we'll see with the Kauravas, if you have really strong selfish desires, then you only focus on your own welfare and you don't care what it takes and who else has to suffer for you to attain your goals. So Arjuna, he's concerned with others, and even that is more so even than himself. He's very soft-hearted. Probably this is a very good quality and a feature of his, a byproduct of his devotion. In the purport, he mentions how quotes the verse from the Bhagavatam, how the devotees attain all the good qualities of the devatas. And then Prabhupada says in the 128 purport also, he says, as far as his soldiers were concerned, he was sympathetic from the beginning, but he felt compassion even for the soldiers of the opposite party, foreseeing their imminent death. As I said, so naturally, your guys, you have actually in warfare, usually when people get some kind of award for bravery or things, and they ask them, why they do it, it's usually because of the people that they're fighting with. They're not thinking about even so much duty or glory or honor or their country or their side, but they think about the other people that they're fighting with. So sometimes they will do extraordinary things to try to save these people who they're risking their lives with. So that's natural to have certain strong bonds happen, as people who are in danger like that on the same side. But here it says Arjuna was not just having compassion for those on his side, but all of the other people. And not even just Bhishma and Drona, the ones he respected the most, just the whole family. He felt that this was just an unnecessary and really terrible thing that was happening. Prabhupada talks a little bit more about Arjuna's character here in the purports. And he says, this is 132 through 35, those verses are together in the purport of those verses. Arjuna's deep affection for community and family members is exhibited here, partly due to his natural compassion for them. He is therefore not prepared to fight. Everyone wants to show his opulence to friends and relatives, but Arjuna fears that all his relatives and friends will be killed on the battlefield and he will be unable to share his opulence after victory. He says this is a typical calculation of material life. As he's, Arjuna is he's showing some qualities of devotion, but he's not in his compassion is noble and a byproduct of his devotional character, but it is out of balance, as we'll discover. It's and that's the main problem. But it's the root of it is nobility and saintliness, Prabhupada says. But it's to a level that clouds his vision. It's, and so here you can see that he's considering that that even if he, and this is, you know, the other side's thinking like that. Usually when there's a battle like this, they're thinking about who, you know, of the glory of the victory, of the spoils of victory. Certainly Duryodhana and Dhritarashtra are thinking like that. They're gonna have the kingdom. They're gonna finally be able to rule. And here Arjuna's thinking, even if he has that, if all of his relatives are dead, he doesn't want to have it just for him. He wants to share it with everybody. He'll be miserable if he has everything. You see, so how he's thinking for others. You know, where you know, Duryodhana and Dhritarashtra and the other ones, you know, they just want them out of the way. It's mine. So he's how he's thinking. So you know, Arjuna is very, you know, it's a very sweet character that he has. Demonstrating here, very rare. And continuing onward, and then in the verse to that text, the 132 through 35. This is a translation to that. He really, you know, he says it very wonderfully. Arjuna. This is Arjuna speaking. He says, "O Govinda, of what avail to us are a kingdom, happiness, or even life itself, when all those for whom we may desire them are now arrayed on this battlefield? O Madhusudana, when teachers, fathers, sons, grandfathers, maternal uncles, fathers-in-law, grandsons, brothers-in-law, and other relatives are ready to give up their lives and properties, and are standing before me, why should I wish to kill them, even though they might otherwise kill me? O maintainer of all living entities, I am not prepared to fight with them, even in exchange for the three worlds, let alone this earth. What pleasure will we derive from killing the sons of Dhritarashtra?" So he mentions the three worlds. He says, you know, he's not even motivated. You know, Dhritarashtra and Duryodhana are motivated, you know, by this wanting for the kingdom. You know, but he says, not even for all the three worlds would I want to do something like this. You know, no greed in this person. He said, just to avoid this battle, we not even if I had, you know, that means the heavenly planets and all, you know, so many things, the whole universe. I could rule over that. Even that wouldn't motivate me to want to do this. You couldn't pay him, and there's nothing you can pay him to want to do this, because usually things are done for motivation. Right? We usually act for motivation. We want to get something out of it, and you know, for a high enough price, people will do a lot of things.
And so he was even willing to go against his dharma as a kshatriya.
Well, that's where he loses his perspective. Right. Okay, right now, you know, he loses his perspective on that. He's not clear on that, because we'll talk about this a little bit more. Because he gives various arguments. Okay, because first of all, he's just expressing his shock. You know, first of all, he just, you know, this is what's happening to me. He's having this immense physical reaction. And now he's starting to analyze it a little bit. You know, because, you know, you're supposed to, you know, the warriors, the warrior spirit is generally quite prideful. They want to conquer, they want to win, they want to have glorious victory. It's chivalrous type of thing, you know. And it's, you know, that validates them. You know, and so, you know, to have a bigger kingdom and to rule everything, you know, that's great for them. You know, and in fact, you know, if there's something really heavy on the line, you know, they'll be tempted to cheat a little bit. You know, that's the usual temptation. You know, because when you're in the mode of passion, where you have strong desires, you sometimes miscalculate. You sometimes see the right path and sometimes don't see the right path, and you're inclined to cheat just a little bit. Maybe just in this case, it's okay.
You don't want to see.
Yeah, you don't want to see. You know, and when you're deep in ignorance, you think that what's wrong is right and what's right is wrong. But when you have really strong desires, You know, we do that all the time. If somebody, a court judge, if the person has a vested interest, some judge is hearing the patent dispute between Samsung and Apple, and he's got a whole lot of Apple stock, he has to recuse himself. Because even if he tries to be fair, because he wants the Apple stock to go up, just even if he's trying to be fair, the arguments that Apple says just sound better to his mind. And the arguments that Samsung makes just don't sound as good. You can't be impartial. So generally when there's strong desires, it's like that. And so generally people are acting, what are they going to get out of it? So here Arjuna is saying that even if what to speak of this kingdom on earth, if you gave me the chance at everything, all three worlds, even then I'm not even motivated to do it. And so that's another reason why Prabhupada says if somebody is hungry, if they're not hungry, they have no motivation to cook. So here Arjuna says, I don't have any desire in this battle. I have nothing to gain that I think is worthwhile. There's no motivation for me.
But saying like three worlds is that's what exactly he feels, or it is an exaggeration?
No, he means it. I mean, he means it.
Because he was capable of that.
Yeah. He means it. He means it. He said there's nothing you can give him that would make him want to do that.
So he was clearly not under the mode of passion then.
Right? Clearly not. Yeah, he didn't. Yeah, he wasn't motivated that way. This is we'll discover how that's a highly motivated situation to be in. His only problem is that his compassion and feelings are out of proportion. You touched on it already. That it's impinging on his dharmic duty, and that's why I think if we get into him, we'll see then how Krishna addresses that. How he brings that back into proportion, and how his teachings help you to bring things back into the proper perspective. So that's why I want to, in the first chapter, focus on Arjuna's mentality, his feelings, and how he's behaving, and to see how that's remedied by Lord Krishna's instructions.
Well, here Arjuna is using this word like fathers in this battlefield, like grand teachers, fathers. So who are the fathers?
He has other people that are the same age as his fathers. There's I can't remember offhand, there's a whole list of them in the purports and stuff who's the same age. It just means the same age, same generation. Yeah, I can't remember who the exact ones are, but he doesn't have because obviously his actual fathers are gone, but even Dhritarashtra is a father. And Dhritarashtra is his father, his uncle.
Yeah, but he was not in the battlefield, so that's why.
Oh.
Is the elder brother.
Oh.
And his name I'm not recollecting at this moment. He's one person, Burishrava and
Burishrava
Somadatta.
and Somadatta.
Father
They're
and children. And I think Burishrava is elder brother to Dhritarashtra. Not not the whole
not the exact brother, like a cousin or something like that. Okay, so somebody of that same generation. Same generation is how it works out,
Even his father, Somadatta.
Yeah.
Somadatta's son is Burishrava. Somadatta or something like that it was there.
Okay.
So 4 generations or 5 generations. What?
And so then it says, Prabhupada says in the text 45, in this purport, it says, it is the custom, according to Kshatriya fighting principles, that an unarmed and unwilling foe should not be attacked. Arjuna, however, decided that even if attacked by the enemy in such an awkward position, he says, even if they kill, I don't want to kill them, even if they kill me, he would not fight. He did not consider how much the other party was bent upon fighting. All these symptoms are due to soft-heartedness resulting from his being a great devotee of the Lord. So even with provocation, see, first of all, there's motivation, and then there's provocation, right? That even if he stands there and doesn't resist, and they try to kill him, he says, "No, I'll let them kill me." Well, that's even deeper. Motivation is one thing; provocation is another. Even Krishna is going to tell him later on that you'll have trouble because if you withdraw from the battle, because people will talk talk dirt on you, and they will provoke you. He says, yeah, harsh words are hard, even more painful than death for the Kshatriyas, he says. So the provocation's a different thing. And then even further, in this part, this is from text 136 in the purport. It says, according to Vedic injunctions, there are 6 kinds of aggressors. A poison giver, one who sets fire to the house. Now, if any of you, if you know the Mahabharata, this sounds pretty familiar, doesn't it? One who attacks with deadly weapons, one who plunders riches, one who occupies another's land, and one who kidnaps a wife. The Kauravas did every one of these to the Pandavas. Every single one. They tried Duryodhana tried to poison Bhima. They had the house of lack, right? They were, of course, now attacking with deadly weapons. They plundered their riches already in the dice game. They occupied their land and took their wife in the gambling match. They did all of those things. Such aggressors, Prabhupada says, are at once to be killed, and no sin is incurred by killing such aggressors. Such killing of aggressors is quite befitting an ordinary man. He says, but Arjuna was not an ordinary person. And then later on in the same purport, it says, in Arjuna's case, however, one should consider the special type of aggressors, namely his own grandfather, own teacher, friends, sons, grandsons, etc. Because of them, Arjuna thought that he should not take the severe steps necessary against ordinary aggressors. Besides that, saintly persons are advised to forgive. Such injunctions for saintly persons are more important than any political emergency. Arjuna considered that rather than kill his own kinsmen for political reasons, it would be better to forgive them on the grounds of religion and saintly behavior. And in the middle of I left a little part out in the middle where Prabhupada says that the Kshatriyas, though, are not supposed to be cowardly. So they're supposed to kill these aggressors. And I was looking at some of the commentaries from Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur and Srila Baladev Vidyabhushan. And I see how Prabhupada was following their commentaries here in this verse. Because I always thought that Prabhupada was saying that he really should have killed them. But what's happening is that there's it's called Artha Shastra, that this is allowed. So if you're just like a regular person, as Prabhupada says, an ordinary man, and people are aggressive in these ways, it's allowable for you to kill them. Now, according to Dharma Shastra, if these aggressors are relatives, then you're not supposed to kill them. And that's so Arjuna was coming kind of on that. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he has, his commentary comes in the form of kind of additional dialogue. Krishna says, look at these guys. Why don't you kill these aggressors? They've done these things to you. Why aren't you motivated by that? And Arjuna says, no, that they're my relatives, so therefore I shouldn't kill them. So he cites the higher Dharma Shastra. But higher than that, you already mentioned, is this duty of a Kshatriya fighting on religious principles. In the second chapter, it will say, Krishna says that considering your specific duty as a Kshatriya, you should do this because so that means fighting on religious principles. So these two other things are talking about just kind of a regular guy, and you're fighting because there's aggression. So you're either killing them because they're aggressive, or you're not killing them and forgiving them because they're your family. But the whole point of the interaction is because there's some kind of aggression. Here, on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, this is a matter of dharma. They as warriors had to fight here. It wasn't just a question of their personal interactions, of the aggressions there. This was part of they were already ready to forgive them for that and take the 5 villages. But here, this was the question of the legitimate succession of the throne. So this was not just a personal thing between them. You see? So therefore, those two shastras don't apply as much as the dharma of the Kshatriya does. This is fighting on religious principles. That's compared to when the Brahmins do fire sacrifices. This is when they do animal sacrifices, there's not sin. And so when the Kshatriyas fight on religious principles as Kshatriyas, then there's no sin involved in that. And actually, Those who are killed go to the heavenly planets. So what's happening here again is that Arjuna, because of his heart, he's not even though some shastras will say you can go ahead and kill them, even with this further provocation, and Bhima, he's quite aware of what's been done to him. He's not having any trouble with that at all. He's happy to have this opportunity. But Arjuna is like, even though they've done all these things to him, all the 6 types of aggressions, and even though you can see justification for it, he says, no, they're my family members. I should forgive them. That's what a heart Arjuna has. Prabhupada says, driven by selfish motives. This is 144 purport. Driven by selfish motives, one may be inclined to such sinful acts as killing of one's own brother, father, or mother. There are many such instances in the history of the world, but Arjuna, being a saintly devotee of the Lord, is always conscious of moral principles and therefore takes care to avoid such activities. That's what Arjuna then does. First of all, he states the powerful physical reactions he's getting, manifestations of his compassion. He's then explaining how he doesn't have any motivation, how he doesn't even care if they kill him or what they've done to him. He still doesn't want to do it. And then he argues that there'll be sins both from killing his family members and also sins from destroying a family. He tries to, what he's doing, what you got to understand here, and the reason why his arguments make a certain amount of sense, but they miss the point, because what he's doing here is not giving a reasoned argument. Right? When we sit and have a debate, a discussion, we sit here calmly and discuss back and forth. This is not happening here. He's freaking out. Even we're here in the beginning of the 2nd chapter, how he says, right, that I don't see any way to dispel this grief that's drying up my senses. He's in a highly emotional state. So what he's doing here is rationalization. Right? Rationalization means that you're not using reason, logic, and understanding to come to the right conclusion, but you have a specific conclusion in mind and you're trying to find some way to support it no matter what. And that kind of situation usually leads to a poor conclusion. So that's why he's missing the boat. And then Krishna will, in the 2nd chapter, will just put his finger on it. He says, you're speaking learned words, but you're lamenting for that which is not worthy of grief. So you sound like you're making intelligent arguments, but your behavior shows that you don't have any understanding. He blows him away. And what he misses, what you said, that he has a duty as a warrior to do this. This is not a question of, it's not a question of him wanting a kingdom or not. It's not a question of him wanting to get revenge or not, or forgiving or not. It's a question of him doing his duty. But this looks so horrific to him that it just paralyzes him. His compassion is so much that even though it's really, really sweet, it's paralyzing to him. So when he gives these other arguments, we're not to take them as though this is a kind of a calmly reasoned justification on his part, but he's grasping at straws. Any justification he can try to find to get out of this thing, he's doing it. And so that's why he's not wrong in what he says, but they're not so applicable to his situation. So he mentions, so he says, look, I have nothing to gain out of it. I don't feel the anger and devastation from being wronged, and plus it's just he said, you see, it's not only going to be us that die and all my friends and relatives that die, but our ancestors. He makes our ancestors and our descendants are going to be in misery. Because he said all of the elder people are going to die. And he says, plus, we're doing this against the rules of Dharma. We're not, but that's what he's thinking. That this is just so crazy, it's got to be wrong. So he says, if we, the elder members of the family, act inappropriately, and of course, and then are gone also, then the younger people are going to feel inclined to break the rules of Dharma. Why not? It's what our parents did, our grandfathers and uncles and things did. They will be led into adharma. And he says also the women will be led astray. And then you'll have mixed castes and all kinds of things. He says, and then the whole situation of family dharma and things will be gone. So even the ancestors who are supported by the offerings of pinda and things by the descendants, those will stop, they will fall down. So the descendants without proper guidance and with a bad example already presented to them, they're not gonna act properly. So they're gonna fall under under adharma and sinful activities, and they're gonna be degraded. And even the ancestors are gonna fall down. So he says it's not even just us, but it's our future and our past that are gonna be affected.
I think also what's really interesting here in him making these arguments is it further sheds light on really his character as a devotee and how compassionate he is, because he's not even considering that the other party has already done that. So they have not considered what would be the result of them taking the throne not according to law. So
Well,
they've done
and
all
that-
of that already.
And that's what he says. He says, what did he say? We're going to come up to it where he says, even though their hearts have been overtaken by greed and are really ready to do these things, okay, I'm not willing to do that. I'm not going to descend to their level. So yeah, you're exactly right. Yeah, he doesn't want to be party to that. Yeah, he doesn't want to be party to that. And Prabhupada says here in the very first. Oh, what happened? Am I there yet? Oh, okay. I had here it says you took the same purport, and here it says, O Janardhan, although these men, their hearts overtaken by greed, see no fault in killing one's family or quarreling with friends, why should we, who can see the crime in destroying a family, engage in these acts of sin? This also reveals the status of Dhritarashtra and Duryodhana. They're overtaken by greed, and so they in their minds, anything is the end justifies the means, in their mind, and they can't see anything beyond their desired goal. All these other things are nonsense. Who cares for all this dharma stuff? We're going to get what we want. We have the power to do it. We should, the whole thing cheated us in the first place. And now we're going to take it.
I think they think that what they are doing is dharma. They think that
Yeah,
this kingdom I deserve.
Yeah, exactly. So whatever they do, then it's justified.
Yes, right.
Yeah. That's mode of ignorance. You see, you think the wrong thing is the right thing. Yeah, and you want to, and you don't care. You're happy to hurt others in order to get it. That's just that's how things are done in this world.
Well, that's not really dharma. That's their skewed idea of dharma.
Yeah.
They're in the mode of
Yeah,
ignorance.
that's. But they think they're right.
Right.
That's the somebody in the mode of passion where they just have strong desires. They will kind of fade in and out. Sometimes they will see what the right thing to do is and will do it. Sometimes they'll see the right thing and be tempted to deviate a little bit, cut corners a little bit, and sometimes they'll be mistaken because it's just so strong. They want to see it as justified. Nobody wants to see themselves as doing wrong. There must be a way to justify it. And then somebody who's in the mode of ignorance, they're so needy. They're so unhappy. And they can easily rationalize everything. And they just think that, why can't I just get what I want? There must be it must be the right thing to be able to do. And all these other things, all these rules that are stopping me from getting what I want, that's unjustified. That's a an injustice being done to me.
I think somebody who's in moral goodness, he can only have clear understanding what is right and what is wrong.
That's right, because the difference, see, our judgment is changed so much by our level of need and desire. So in the mode of goodness, there is a high degree of self-satisfaction. You see. And so a judge who has no vested interest in the case can sit back and calmly judge who's making the right arguments. Somebody who makes a big, like I said, if you have a talent show with children, you do not want the parents to be the judges. The child that cannot sing suddenly, to the parent sounds like like a bird. Singing as beautifully as a bird, because they have that desire. They want it to be that way. So the more that we are under the control of neediness and unhappiness, then the less we can see things rationally. We become more and more selfish. We think only of ourselves. Well, think about it. Think about when you're happy, you have a really good day. You're happy to share that happiness with other people. You're friendly to people. What if you feel really sick? You got a terrible headache. Right? Don't you become a little more self-absorbed? Don't talk to me right now. Oh, I gotta do this with this. And you're not so attentive to others. You might get a little angry with them more easily. This kind of thing. So when you're really needy, then it narrows your perspective, makes you more self-centered, more selfish. You see others as either persons that are causing you pain, or that maybe you can use them in some way to relieve your pain, but you don't see them as genuine. We say objectify them. We see them as objects rather than as other people. And then in the mode of passion, you see friend and foe. You have your folks that help you with your goals. You have those who oppose you, they're your enemies. All right? And the other people are irrelevant. But in the mode of goodness, you see, we're all humans. We're all, better yet, we're all souls. And I see that you're like me. I feel empathy for you. I'm not so just concerned with myself. In the transcendental situation, Shuddha Sattva, then you only think of the other. That's how it goes.
So even in mode of goodness, we can't take right decisions?
No, we understand what's right. We understand what's right. But we still have there's a certain selfishness that remains. It says the mode of goodness conditions by knowledge and happiness. We heard Prabhupada speaking in a lecture. We listen on Mondays. We have usually a lecture by Prabhupada for our morning class, and he was saying how the Brahmanas will think that they're very learned, very renounced, such things. They're not wrong, but they have a little bit of ego, and they take a little bit of pleasure from the fact that they have knowledge and understanding. You see, or when say we have as devotees, we're supposed to want to help others, be concerned with others, right? But if we are thinking that we're very compassionate, nice people because we do that, okay, well, that's nice, but it's a little bit of ego is in there, a little bit of ego that we're, His Holiness Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj makes this beautiful statement where he says that if we're envious, if we're not very, very kind, then we may even want to inhibit people from making progress in spiritual life, because they may one day rival us, right? Especially if they do something you do. You say you're a wonderful kirtan singer, and you have somebody comes in, joins the movement, right? And they're great singers, and you think, I don't want to teach them because maybe they'll overshadow me. Is that somebody with a little bit of envy, he says, may help people even to exceed themselves. And he's like, where's the envy in that? But just because you will think that I'm being a munificent person, compassionate and helping them. Whereas when you don't have any of that left, you just think these people are so valuable that it's my privilege to be able to do anything to assist. Not that it's to my credit. That is my privilege. So the mode of goodness has that little bit of, we are kind to others, we appreciate others, we, don't want to harm others, and then we want to help them actually. But we feel a little bit, there's a little bit of this happiness that's resonating in the ego that we get from that. It's way better than anything else that we have here than the lower modes, but there's still something that has to go away. Okay.
So not just decisions, but if we are transcendental, our consciousness also will be right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So here, Prabhupada says, both the Pandavas, this is from the purport of verse 1:1, both the Pandavas and the sons of Dhritarashtra belong to the same family, but Dhritarashtra's mind is disclosed herein. He says, Mamaka Pandavas Chaiva. He deliberately claimed only his sons as Kurus, and he separated the sons of Pandu from the family heritage. One can thus understand the specific position of Dhritarashtra in his relationship with his nephews, the sons of Pandu. Because just naturally in the Vedic culture, it's like I said, he says fathers-in-law. Dhritarashtra should see the Pandavas as his sons. Not there's Mamaka, my sons, and then there's the Pandu sons. He's making an artificial distinction in the context of the times.
To benefit himself.
Yeah, to benefit. Yeah, that's why. You can see where Arjuna is having compassion for everybody. He's seeing them all as his relatives. He doesn't see that separation because they want to. They're trying to kill the Pandavas, right? They're somebody else. They're Pandavas' sons. They have nothing to do with me. There's mine and them, and so that discloses the evil mind of their strong desires.
So is Arjuna in the mode of goodness or in transcendental mode of goodness?
Well, he's in here. He's in a special case. Because Arjuna, in his natural case, of course, he's an eternal associate of the Lord Krishna. So therefore, transcendence is there. But in this case, he said Krishna is playing with him a little bit, and so he's looking more like he's in the mode of goodness, and even more so, not even super well in the mode of goodness, because his perspective is being his compassion is too great. And if you're in the mode of goodness, you'll know what you're supposed to do. And so we're going to find out when we bring it into balance, the compassion into balance, that'll be the true mode of goodness. So now he's under the control of aversion. Let's take a look at this next slide. And I'm saying that one of the themes we'll see so much in Bhagavad Gita is this raga dvesha, attachment and aversion, that keep us. These two things they're inherent in us. Even single-celled organisms, they will approach food and they will run away from things that are danger. Things that are unpleasant. Other even small multicellular ants. You step next to them and they run. You put some. So attachment and aversion is core of everything. Things that are pleasant. Think about it when it's really cold outside, right? How we curl into a little ball, we withdraw, and when it's really warm, how we come out. we're more open. So there's the attachment. Happy brings us out, and aversion we withdraw. And we have to learn, even just to exist in the world, we have to learn to control these impulses to some degree. We know we have to do things we don't want to do sometimes. And we can't do all the things we want to do. The little kids want to put everything in their mouth. We have to train them, not to do that. They're going to die, and we have to do the same thing. It would be, we plan for the future. You might not feel like going to work today, but You know, but you have to control that because it's not kind of nice to have a job. After tomorrow, it'd be kind of nice. These kinds of things. The student doesn't always feel like, oh, I'm so excited to go study today, but the future will be more unpleasant. So we have to control these things. But attachment and aversion, they are enemies for us acting in a rational, coherent way. And when we're dealing with, we talked about, when we studied the Nectar of Instruction, we talked about this unsteady devotional service, where we're in that situation. Arjuna, we're going to cross it again in later on in the 3rd chapter, where Arjuna asks, why do I do things that I don't want to do, sinful things, almost as if by force? Right? So we have this situation when we are practicing sadhana bhakti, that we want to serve Krishna. We really do, otherwise we wouldn't be here. But we find ourselves sometimes not remembering Krishna, not serving, distracted by this, pulled by that. It's called unsteadiness. Why? Because we're under the control of this attachment and aversion. And in the early instructions in chapter 2, it's going to come right up again. Matra sparshasti kaunteya. He's going to deal with this situation. So here we have two sides, both of who actually are violating dharma, but coming from two different angles. With Duryodhana and Dhritarashtra, it's coming from this powerful, selfish desire for possessing the kingdom. And it's a very dark thing. He doesn't care who suffers in order to get that, what has to happen for him to do that. And so he can't see. That's why it says in the purport that he was not only materially blind, but he was spiritually blind. Later on, he claims in the Mahabharata that he knew better, actually. There's the whole Dhritarashtra's lament where he says, when this happened, I knew there was no hope for us. And so even though he had the knowledge, but it couldn't stay in his heart. He couldn't. He knew that it was. It's crazy. You're going to fight with the Pandavas and Krishna on the holy place of Kurukshetra. You have a chance for that. That's going to help you.
So why couldn't it stay in his heart?
Because he just wanted it so bad. He overpowers his mind. So and he goes into all kind of rationalization. Yeah, it's just he wants it so bad it has to happen. And so he hopes against hope. He finds any reason to justify it, even though he, in the back of his mind, he knows it can't happen. And Arjuna, he's experiencing aversion. Okay, now it comes from a good place, where he's concerned for others, where he's not desiring something. He doesn't want to hurt anybody. He wants to help people, But also there's some. It also just causes him too much pain. He's attached to these people. There's an attachment behind. There's always an aversion behind your attachment, and an attachment behind your aversion. So he has this. These people are so dear to his heart that he doesn't want to part with them, and so he also can't see clearly his duty and dharma because of his aversion. This is just too terrible. He physically can't do it. He's becoming just completely physically incapacitated by that feeling of doing that. And that's because, as we'll find out, he's not having the right perspective on things. He doesn't understand. Krishna's going to explain to him the soul, and that's going to be what balances things out. Right now he's seeing this as a concrete, fully real event that's happening and can't be undone. Where when he introduces the soul, we see this is one event in a long, long history. It puts it into perspective. This is now, this terrible thing is happening, and you can never be undone. And people say, something has ruined my life. This is going to ruin his whole life. He thinks. You see, so that's compassion and concern has made him lose his perspective. So So both of them in some ways are not following Dharma appropriately because of that. But Arjuna hasn't, because he's coming from a place of goodness. Prabhupada says, he says, while observing the situation, this is 146 purport. While observing the situation of his enemy, Arjuna stood up on the chariot, but he was so afflicted with lamentation that he sat down again, setting aside his bow and arrows. Such a kind and soft-hearted person, in the devotional service of the Lord, is fit to receive self-knowledge. And so this is the difference between him and Dhritarashtra and Duryodhana. Even though, because that's the benefit of having his lack of being able to follow Dharma come from a good place instead of a bad place. He's receptive. Because he says, no, this is not really right. and he'll be able to understand the actual situation. Where Dhritarashtra and Duryodhana, they simply want that thing, and you can't dissuade them. Even they know in some ways that they're doing wrong, but they can't. They just can't do it. Where Arjuna is going to be able to, because it's not coming so much from a selfish place. It's just that little bit of attachment. He's happy with them. And mostly, it's just concern for them. He can't. At the end of the battle, Yudhishthira has a similar type of experience. All this stuff has happened because of me. All these people have died because of me. So it's more of a not a selfish thing, more of a selfless thing.
Prabhu, one question. Like while giving all these arguments, Arjuna, because he's so strong and self-sufficient, right? So he is asking Krishna. It means he is not convinced with his arguments.
No, because he's not offering calm, reasoned. He's not sitting down like we're sitting down and having a discussion. We're peaceful, we're relaxed, and we're trying to understand. Arjuna's freaked out. You see, he's not just dispassionate thinking, well, I don't think Krishna, this really isn't the right thing to do. He's freaking out. He doesn't want to do it. He's trying to desperately come up with some kind of way to justify not doing it. So there's not clear-headedness there. And also he realizes, he knows what his dharma is. So that makes him a little nervous.
So he's confused and bewildered.
Yeah, he's averse to doing it. So he wants to try, and he wants to try to justify it, but still he even Dhritarashtra later, he said he knew that he wasn't going to be successful. So how much more Arjuna knows? But he just, he's trying to find, he's grasping at straws. Any way to justify this because he just doesn't want to do it. Please don't make me do that. He's telling, and if you look at how he addresses Krishna, he says, he says, if you want to kill them, you kill them yourself. He hints by the use of his the different names. He says, you're the maintainer of all living entities. So if you want them dead, you go ahead and do it. It's not me. Don't let me do it.
So he doesn't want to do it, but still he is asking Krishna. It means he has a doubt whether that is
Of course, yeah, of course. And of course, well, Krishna is also going to engage with him. See, in the first part of the second chapter, they're going to discuss this further. At the end of this chapter, he sits down. He's a mess, And then Krishna teases him a little bit, Yeah. And he says, why are you such a mess? And then Arjuna, so he kind of, in some ways, he reminds Arjuna that he has this duty as a Kshatriya, and so Arjuna knows that. I mean, that's why he was there in the first place, all right? He's not that he's an ignorant person, but he's seeing that, and it's just freaking him out. So that's why I want us to get inside his head a little bit and inside his heart a little bit, so that we can be like Arjuna when we hear Krishna begin his instructions and see how that affects that.
And he's just finding out is any way he can.
Yeah, that's all. He's anything. Yeah, I mean, whatever. Like a kid trying to explain to his mother why he didn't finish his homework or whatever. The things he says are not wrong, but they're not applicable to his situation. See, that's the thing. So that sounds good, and that's why Krishna pinches him later on. He says, says, "Oh, you're sounding like you're being a little big pundit, but look how you're behaving. Pundits don't behave that way." So what he says is sound in a different context, but in this context, it doesn't apply to the actual situation. There's the higher dharma there that he's not dealing with. You see. So that's so he's his judgment, his understanding, his perception is being overpowered by this extreme aversion that's coming from his good heart. And so the Yudhishthira will have a similar kind of experience after the battle is over. That because nobody expected, almost everybody to die. Right, there's the Pandavas survived, Ashvatthama, and who was the other person who survived? Kripacharya. Yeah, they were the only survivors, right? Satyaki. Kritavarma, Kritavarma survived, yeah. That's what it's Kritavarma survived, and Kripacharya, Ashvatthama, the Pandavas. Satyaki also?
Yeah, Satyaki also.
Okay. So there's just a handful of people, and there was, a whole lot of folks there on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. And so afterwards, Yudhishthira was freaked out. All this for me to gain the throne. So that's the soft-hearted nature,
And here, like both Yudhishthira and Arjuna were freaked out in a different times. And generally, what makes a person bewildered in a certain kind of situation? Because Yudhishthira is also a very soft-hearted person. In the beginning of battle, also he knows all these pros and cons, but still he went ahead for the battle.
Yeah.
Arjuna bewildered in this stage. Yudhishthira bewildered in a later stage. What is actually makes?
Well, of course, in one sense, it's a really extraordinary circumstance. And so in a really extraordinary circumstance, you can lose your equilibrium a little bit, right? Because if this really hits hard at somebody who is compassionate, the people in the mode of goodness, generally will. There's even that situation in the Bhagavatam where Balaram is engaged by the Brahmins doing the sacrifice at Namesharanya to kill that Balbala, because he was that demon who was disrupting the sacrifice, and so they engaged him in that service. Later on, though, when Balaram came back, it said that they realized that his killing activities were finished, and they were all happy. And so even people with wisdom, right? It says the devotees feel other people's pain, right? That's their nature. And so when it's something really, really extraordinary like this, then there's a chance. And of course, it says here that Krishna, in both cases, there was an opportunity first for Krishna to speak nicely. So Krishna also helped to push Arjuna over the edge. And at the end, then Yudhishthira goes to Bhishma Dev. So it's also part of the Leela. And Bhishma Dev, who was, pierced with the arrows so much that it was like a bed. He was lying on the arrows that were piercing his body. Gave good instructions to Yudhishthira. So there's a little bit of Leela stuff going on there too. Krishna's internal potency helps to confuse them. But just by nature, even somebody who's quite sober, who's going to confront something so extraordinary, it's going to be certainly a test for them to digest that. There's a lot to digest. That's what happened. Yudhishthira is like, all these people killed just for me to be the king. So it's hard. It's a real test to their sobriety. For somebody who's cruel, no problem. So it's going to be a test when something that extraordinary comes that way. It's natural. So let's see, what do we have here? We have a few minutes left. If there's any, we're gonna start chapter 2 next week, I'll give you a little hint how we're going to approach it. Generally, the Acharyas tell us that the first 6 chapters of Bhagavad Gita are about karma yoga or nishkam karma yoga without desires. The middle 6 chapters are specifically about bhakti. And the last 6 chapters are about jnana. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that because karma yoga and jnana are not useful on their own, that there is bhakti interspersed in there to make it valuable. If we read Srila Prabhupada's purports, he talks about bhakti from page 1 till the end of it. And he translates it. Karma yoga, devotional service. This is devotional service. It's either, just right in your face all the time. But of course, when you see it, the actual verses, oftentimes they don't mention Krishna openly or directly. Prabhupada shows us how we apply what's described in that verse to devotional service. But the actual verses aren't explicitly talking about bhakti. So in the 6th chapter, Prabhupada gives this really interesting purport that kind of bring these things together, and you can I think helps us understand where Prabhupada was coming from when he writes his purports, and how we can use the fact that there's these different topics in the Gita. He says, first of all, he talks about the different yogas. He says it comes up, many people talk about the yoga ladder. So there's karma yoga or nishkama karma yoga, jnana yoga, ashtanga yoga, and bhakti yoga. And Prabhupada mentions those explicitly like that. And he says if one can follow those one after another, but that's a long way to self-realization, he says, if you go from one to the other, to the other, to the other. And he explains that their only value is if they lead you to bhakti. And he explains that bhakti accomplishes all that the other ones do. So therefore, it's quite appropriate to go directly to bhakti. Okay. Now, why do we keep the other chapters then? Right? Well, then he says this makes this interesting statement. He says, but in order to understand bhakti yoga minutely, we have to understand these other yogas. So what we're going to do is, especially with these first 6 chapters, is we're going to try to take a look at what these other yogas do. We're going to see how they are, as Prabhupada said. For Prabhupada's suggesting there is that they are components of bhakti. They each do something that's a component. That's why if you analyze it minutely to understand bhakti, that's also why bhakti does them all. They're components of bhakti. And so so when you have bhakti in its full-fledged form, it does all those things. If it doesn't do all those things, then bhakti is not very complete. So one thing we can do is we can take a look at these yogas a little bit individually to see what they do on their own. And we can take a look at our own bhakti to see if maybe is our bhakti complete? Is that really happening? Or is there something maybe missing from our attitude? So these things, there's something else that's added to them, but these are essential components of bhakti. And then we'll do as Prabhupada does, show us. We have no interest in practicing them independently, but how are these principles applied in our devotional service? And that's what Prabhupada does in his purports. But he acknowledges that they're there in chapter 6, and then he tells us what the use of that they can help us to understand minutely what devotion means, because we can just say, oh, I'm serving Krishna, but what does that mean? What are the components of service? And so we'll see the doing the right thing without a specific desire. Nishkama Karma Yoga. That's supposed to actually, the Nishkama Karma Yoga is supposed to take us to Atma Jnana. Because we see, we'll talk about this more, and the Atma Jnana then is supposed to put us into a position where we can go into the 6th chapter and realize the super soul. Baladev Vidyabhushan says, if you understand yourself as a soul, super soul is right there. It's natural to understand it. It's not such a big mystery. Right now, we can't see either ourselves as a super soul. And so when we come to the when we are not selfishly motivated, when our service is like that, we will come more to the level of understanding ourselves as a soul, at which point we're much more able to focus our minds. That's what's happening in the 6th chapter. They're focusing our mind. They're, in that case, the Ashtanga yogis, because it is the Ashtanga yogis, they're focusing on the super soul. We're going to try to remember Krishna. That's how we do it. But it's the same thing. It's being able to control the mind. So we're going to try to see a little bit how those individual yogas work, and see how Krishna is teaching, how it applies to Arjuna's situation. So from that we can see how we can apply it to our situation. Because we are under the control of attachment and aversion, people. It's just a fact. So Arjuna's is kind of extreme, so that helps us to see how it works. And so then we can see how if it can work for him, it can work for us. All right? So we'll I'm not sure exactly how. I'm thinking we'll get through at least. Maybe we'll get into through the whole Sankhya Yoga part. I might shoot for that next time, which is the late 30s, I think, of the 2nd chapter. I at least want to get through. Depending on how, I'm going to look and see how much I want to get out of it. At least we want to get through text 15. Because and text, when Krishna starts his instructions, he gives us almost like a little quick synopsis. From where he starts to 15 is a nice little synopsis, and then he gets deep into the understanding of the soul. First, he tells us about the soul. Then he tells us how you approach liberation through controlling attachment and aversion. So I'm going to take a look at it and see how quickly we can kind of go through those things. If we go through pretty quickly, then we'll take it all the way up to where the Sankhya Yoga ends, and then pick up Buddha Yoga the next time. So I'm going to see. I have to work on that. But the plan is to get up to that point of where Sankhya Yoga, and Krishna says, "Now I've told you about Sankhya Yoga. Now we're going to talk about Buddha Yoga." That's where I'm aiming for. And if not, though, we may stop a little bit short of that. So if it looks like it's too much to digest all in 1 hour-and-a-half session, then we may have to stop a bit before that. But if you read up until that section, you will be safe.
Sankhya Yoga and Buddha Yoga.
Yeah, well, it's right around. Well, no. To be safe, go all the way up to, it's like in the late 30s, I think. It's where Krishna says, that up to now I've told you about Sankhya Yoga, and now there's Buddha Yoga. I just don't have it in front of me. No, we won't do the Buddha Yoga part. Let me look here. I have my. Okay, let's see here. Bhaktivedanta Vedabase. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2. Where is it? 39.
39, yes.
Yeah, 39. Thus far, I've described this knowledge to you through analytical study, Sankhya. Now listen as I explain it in terms of working without fruitive results of Sonaprita. When you act in such knowledge, you can free yourself from the bondage of works. So if things move well, we may try to go up that far. And if not, we'll stop a little short. But because we're gonna. So first, he gives kind of an interesting little summary of what he's gonna of a real bare bones summary of the from where does it start? He starts with 11, isn't it? His instructions begin. Well, first he chastises him. He really starts at 12. 12, 13, 14, and 15 are a really succinct summary of a lot of what we're going to cover. Actually, he really does he really summarizes a lot in those those texts. He reveals that we're souls. He talks about this attachment and aversion, and how when we come to the point of having them, first after we tolerate them and learn to deal with them, we come to the point of liberation. There's a big jump between that 14 and 15 that happens. First there's tolerance, and then they're the same. There's samadukha sukham dhiram. So it's a big jump between the two. But it really hints at what happens with us.
I didn't get you.
There's we'll talk about it next time. But there's text 14 in 12 and 13. He talks about the soul, how we never died, never was a time we didn't exist, and never was a time when we won't. And then 13 he explains how the bodies are changing, but the soul is there. So we're already experiencing changes of bodies all the time. We don't get so freaked out about that. And then in 14 and 15 he talks about Arjuna not freaking out so much. He says we have these sensations, the tanmatras, our sense experiences, and the sense experiences, are pleasant and unpleasant, and we have to learn how to tolerate those. We talked about overcoming the raga dvesha. That's what's being taught. And then when that becomes mature, those two are the same. Sama, dukkha, sukham, dhiram. And we hardly notice that anymore. That's the point of liberation. So he talks about the soul. He talks about the ultimate goal of liberation. All in those few verses is a really thumbnail. It's a kind of a it's a very simple summary, but it covers a lot of ground. You're a soul. We want to be liberated.
12 to 215.
Yeah. It's really succinct, but it covers a lot of ground. You have Arjuna there sitting there freaked out and on the chariot not moving, and then suddenly we're talking liberation even. He a lot of what follows covers that same thing in detail. That'll be kind of unpacked as we go through, especially the next three, four chapters. But you'll see that covers a lot of ground right there. It gives us kind of a thumbnail sketch of what we're looking at. So that's why we may focus on that a little bit. It might take too long to get through that to devour all of the other ones, but we'll see. Because we'll summarize kind of the notion of the soul. So so anyway, so that's what we're going to try to do. Thank you we have people listening online, and we have people who listen to the recordings, but it is kind of nice to have at least something of a studio audience, and so I appreciate you guys taking the time and trouble to do that.